What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Dare2727. Shout out to my Transformer collectors, 112 scale collectors, whatever you collect, shout out to you. And this month's video for March 2021 is, and before I get to that, first, I'm sorry for being so late on videos recently, but life is life, and I've been busy with life. But for March 2021, the video is the beginning of another series. I already have the 2MP and not 2MP series, which I do a weekly video a weekly video about whether a figure is an MP or not by today's standards. I'm doing that all for 2021. But this new series is called My Road to the Perfect Display, and it's going to be episodes that's going to be random. It's not going to be on any schedule. But basically, like I said, it's trying to build the perfect MP display. And the MP is a catch-out because I collect more than MP, but MP is kind of my focus and bread and butter. But I'm trying to build a perfect display. And in this first episode, it's the background. I'm going to tell you where I came from and stuff like that. And they're going to be random. So every time I make progress on it, whether I find the product I think is interesting or whether I, hear something about somebody else's collection that I find is interesting, I'm going to do a video in it. And it's going to be ultimately how I get to my perfect display. Because I think that, everybody has an end game as far as figures. Oh, I want to collect them all, or I want this particular team, or I want this, or I want that. But nobody figures out what they want their final display to look like. And for some people, what they have is good enough, but for me, it's not. And that's a good place to get started. Why am I doing this? Well, and for all my longtime viewers, if I talked about how COVID kind of changed my thoughts about collecting in 2021, I used to be a guy to catch them all, especially a Transformer standpoint. And, as I sat back and I was in my house, so normally pre-COVID, I would be able to see, my collection is in my office, and that's the only room in the house I have to myself. And I normally would see my collection maybe 20 hours a week pre-COVID. But, during COVID and moving forward, because I'll be able to work from home probably for the most part moving forward, I see my collection like 100 plus hours a week. And just like anything, the more you look at it, the more you can see flaws in it. And one of my biggest flaws in it is I got some dope figures, but the display just always leave me like, It just brings me down a little bit. And, Bobby Skullface, Robert Den just talked about this in their For Dummies episode. I got, if you're in this MP game, you got at least $10,000 worth of figures and like $300 worth of furniture, and that doesn't make sense. And so as I'm looking at my collection every day, it's just like I want something better. I want something to pop more. I want something to bring it to life more. And so I'll talk more specifically about kind of, I highlight my wants going forward because I don't 100% have something mapped out. That's why this is going to be an ongoing series. But I do have some things I think I want, at least some kind of bullet points of what I want my collection to display like. So before we get to that, let's talk about background. And so version 0 of my collection started around 2014, 2013, between 2010 and 2014. Let me say that because I wouldn't consider myself a collector then. That's what I'm saying. Version 0 basically was I would randomly pick up a Transformer figure. It wasn't MP. It was just Chug, whatever was in Target or Walmart when I went there for other stuff. And so what I had floating shelves, like 3 floating shelves in my office at my house. Now me and my wife have a house. And I just put figures on those floating shelves. And it looked okay, but it just wasn't, it was good for what it was. It was good for somebody who was not a collector, not with no focus, nothing, just picking up a figure here and there. It actually served that purpose. And the good thing about it is it kept me kind of focused on what I was buying just because I didn't have the space. So it would be like, hey, like I remember I bought the 4 Horsemen. And I was like, hey, do I want to display them there? Nah, I don't have enough space to display them properly. So I just bought it, flipped it on eBay or whatever. But so they did give me that. But as I kind of moved further and further down in my collecting, and MP came out, and I fell in love with MP the minute I wrapped my head around how much it cost and paying for it, I fell in love with it and went down that rabbit hole. And as I went down the rabbit hole, I was like, I didn't want those $100, $80, whatever figures, MP and third party, standing on these floating shelves that can fall over, that could break, that could do this or that can do that. And so I Googled, what's the best display, and a lot of people hit back on and basically was saying DTOS. And so I was like, IKEA details are the best. They're made for kind of displaying things. Some instantly fell in love. I think I seen them on a Tuesday. I think that Saturday I went to IKEA and bought like two or three of them. And that's how I got started. So version 1.0 of the collection was, however many details set up with some figures in it. I didn't have as many figures back then, so it was probably like 2 or 3 figures in the detail. And I didn't know the fine points of, display back then. It was good enough. It was a glass case, which is one of the things I do prefer. And it made my figures look much better than a floating shelf. So that was kind of, good enough for me at that time. And as my collection got bigger and bigger and bigger, I added more and more details. And so version 2 of the collection was, well, I'm not going to say version 2. Version 1B of the collection was just more and more details with more and more figures in it. And so I learned throughout this that you can, change heights on the details, because I think Toy World's constructed it. But once the Toy World Devastator hit, I needed a way to display it. And so I was moving shelves, and I saw somebody say, hey, you can just, slide the shelf up and down. You don't have to take the complete shelf off. Like you can have more or less if you use rope clips. Like, oh, what's rope clips? Rope clips are just these little $3 clip set from Home Depot that you clip in, and you basically adjust the vertical height. And what that did was 2 things. It gave me enough room to display Devastator, but it also adjusted the vertical space of smaller figures in my display, which at the time I didn't know. I knew about negative and vertical space, but I didn't tie it into collecting. So once I figured out it could be tied to collecting, I think that took my collection to another level, because it broke up the uniformity in the display. So even though I had a whole bunch of details, it basically made them look unique because there were different heights at different places or whatever. And so also outside of my normal Transformer display, I have a couple of niche pieces. Like my wife bought me something. I have 1/1/6 scale figure and my wrestling figures. And for my wrestling figures, I found a set of cases on Etsy from a company called Display Go-Go. And they allow me to group my wrestling figures kind of by promotion, independent, regional, whatever. They let me group my wrestling figures the way I want them to. And they provide lights and kind of what I want, at least right now, for my wrestling collection. So I have a series of those, and I'm pretty much happy with that display. Like, of course, it can use some changes, but I'm happy with that display. But my Transformer display, my most important display, I'm not happy with. And as I look at it, because like I said earlier, I look at it more and more and more, I could just see all the flaws in it. And I think that, actually, let me say this. One of the impetus of me waiting to change my collection is that me and my wife are looking for a home. And hopefully when we find, as a family and we move, she was like, hey, wait till we get a new house to spend, X amount of dollars on a new display. Because I feel like my display and what I want now is going to be much more than what IKEA shells. So like at my high point, I had 11 IKEA details, and that's what, $60. So I had $720 for my display. I think my display now, if I, just looking at some of the more premium options, is going to be in the thousands. So, maybe 1,500. So she said, before you invest that money into a display that in a home we're not going to be in, let's find our next home, our quote unquote forever home, and then you can kind of invest the money into the display for that. So our house hunting and moving kind of coincides with this series. But now that we have kicked it up, I can talk more about, what I want, because I kind of got an idea how much space I have, what I want from a display, my end goal for a display. And I can kind of list out some things and some products that may help me get there. So this is just the background, the reason why I'm doing this series. Just in summary, one, we're moving. I hate my display, and kind of COVID has made me rethink my collection. What's important to me, what's not important to me, and I'm just using this as a chronicle to, as I go from kind of a display, a normal run of the mill display, not a bad display, but just generic kind of display, as I go to something more personalized, more premium, more to display the quality of the products I have. I'm chronicling this for the community, and hopefully this may help somebody. And if it doesn't, maybe it helps you on what not to do. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy talking to the community, and thank you guys as always for watching.